Hello beauties, how are you doing? Carrie Smets here. So I want to talk about a concept. To be honest, I don't know how I'm going to completely frame it, but we will get there because I think it's really important to share. Um, I got some downloads while I was in the shower, the case for most people, and it literally left me shaking. So I knew it was something that would also give others the much needed insight. So the first thing, the main concept of this video will help you understand that firstly, life is a game. And what I mean by that is that most of us, most of the time, either if you are spiritually inclined in terms of you understanding that you are soul first, and how that element has such power in terms of how we can choose to experience this earthly experience. But even if you have that awareness, a lot of us in the here and now, once in a while, we forget this. And specifically, what I mean when I say that this is a game in relation to us knowing that we are soul first is that it's so easy in any given moment, especially when it's attached to a lot of our core woundings. So it could be something in relation to a relationship. Actually, when we're being honest, it can be, it can, we can forget in any given situation. These 3D things that we have to do or be a part of. Don't sound that enthusiastic. No, the human experience is amazing, but it can be something that can be, we can be stuck in a place of where we are not really fulfilled and enjoying life when we are not fully understanding this universal law that I believe is a universal law in terms of us really knowing that we are playing a game here. And some of you might have heard me say this term before, and you might know what I'm talking about, you might not, you might have your own interpretation of what I mean, so I'm going to give it to you now. So, what it means to me when we say that we are, this human experience is a game, is that it really is connected to this, again, universal law of oneness. So, let me frame it and break it down. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're going for a job interview and you have a lot of nerves coming up. If you have some level of self-awareness, you might be able to connect some of your internal worries or your internal dialogue. You could see that it's connected to your childhood experiences, really realizing that the deep fear is being rejected and it meaning the same thing that you decided about yourself as a child. So you could have that level of awareness and know where it's coming from. But where a lot of us can get stuck in relation to realizing that this is a game and the whole oneness thing is the 3D experience. Let's say that we're at this interview now, and where we are energetically, and this can change in a matter of seconds, is really going to determine the experience that we have with this person that's interviewing us in this particular example. Because if we choose to focus and play the game, the fear game, we're more likely to have reflected back to us, this person being the interviewer, of those fears. And this still serves a purpose. It's all manifestation, guys. So it's basically ego manifestation. Your ego is based on fear and trying to protect you from feeling those feelings. So if our consciousness is in the ego, we're caught up in that game, the ego game, it's more likely, like I said, that that person will reflect to you those fears. And this can still serve us because it can bring up things that we need to acknowledge. We can also play the game if we have no self-awareness of just continuing the cycle of suffering because we have no self-awareness, and obviously we're all at different stages, and this is why it's so good to use the human experience, to use others to bring you up to a place of where you want to be in terms of getting out of that experience of suffering because of a lack of self-awareness, and basically seeing that experience as just reaffirming to you what you already believe. So if you have some level of self-awareness, then let's say you have an interview experience where you do well but you don't get the job. So in that moment, your biggest fear happens in terms of emotionally. You start to feel all those emotions that you felt during your school experience of not feeling good enough or being rejected. You see this experience as rejection. And if you have some self-awareness, you have that, you know that connection, and if you have the tools, you can start to process those emotions and let yourself cry, let yourself grieve those emotions that wasn't fully able to process in the past. But this is the next level that I really want to encourage you guys. It's all consciousness, guys, by the way, these levels. Is I want to invite you through my explanation to really see that we can invite in this new experience. And this is the experience when, firstly, no matter what shows up, we just move towards what feels good. And I'm going to break this down because this is also downloads for me. So as I'm explaining, it's also making more and more sense to me. So what I mean by that is, let's go back to the interview example. We go for this interview, and instead of focusing on the ego's experience in terms of the fears, and it's obviously a part of this process, and this type of consciousness means that you probably, if you do have fears that come up, you process them and work through them before you go to the interview. That's your interview prep. It's energetic work, basically, guys, and it goes hand in hand with the 3D stuff in terms of preparation for the interview. But when you realize that this energy world, and that you buy into that consciousness, if this is resonating with you guys as well, this is really about living a life based on the beliefs that actually make you feel good. That's all it's about. So I'm basically proposing to you this new way of thinking, and it might resonate with you already. So let's say realistically, you might still have some fears coming up around your interview. So you process those beforehand because you realize the power of energy. So you work through those feelings that you felt as a child at school, and you really let yourself feel those feelings. That's the key. You let yourself feel those feelings, so those feelings that are not in alignment to the results that you want don't manifest in that interview. So you work for those feelings. You might cry. You might get some realizations where it really stems from, and you work through that. Then you get to a place, once you've let go of the energy that is not in alignment, it's not serving you in regards to what you want, then you can start to get into alignment in regards to what you want in terms of getting this job. And that's really the game. That's really when we realize that things are a lot more to do with the energetics than us having to than us being caught up in the game of focusing so much on the 3D aspect and thinking, having all this internal fears based on the past, and trying to prove ourselves wrong, trying to prove our ego wrong, and putting so much pressure, specifically this example, the interview. So I hope that makes sense to you guys. And there's another bit that I want to add to it that is coming together. Just give me a sec. Let me look at my notes quickly. I did have some notes. Okay, it's coming to me now. So yeah, another thing that we do in these doing things in life. So like I'm going to use the interview example, but it can be literally anything. The process of doing stuff in life. So I have just explained all of that, what goes on, and how we can do stuff in a way that actually makes us experience things more in a ease and grace flowing experience. But also, what happens a lot when we are caught up in this game that's not serving us in terms of a way of living, a way of thinking, a way of being, whatever you want to call it, is we are so attached to this 3D concept of right and wrong. And then we have the big attachment there of what, if we do right or wrong, then this will mean this about us, and it will confirm our biggest fears. So, using the interview example, you might have a dilemma in terms of, let's say, for example, what's going on in your head. You have multiple interviews. One of these interviews that you have would require you having to move to a different location. And a lot of times what happens is we literally get overwhelmed. So we get completely overwhelmed with trying to make the right decision. And the reason why we get overwhelmed because there's such an attachment of trying to prove our worth, trying to prove that we are good enough, trying to do the right thing to feel safe. All these attachments that we are putting on to any given situation. And why we're focusing on trying to feel safe, why we're focusing on trying, meaning that if we're trying to feel safe, we're trying to feel worthy, we're already deciding that we are not close to that goal. We're trying to obtain it. So the most important important thing we can do in that moment is truly first relax, breathe, because what happens is we get overwhelmed. We feel like there's so many variables. We're trying to make the right decision based on this attachment, and we're trying to prove something to ourselves nearly 90% of the time. We need to get back to a place of, okay, what actually makes me... We need to get to a place of actually visualizing it. So you visualize the different variables and which one actually gives you the feeling of feeling worthy. And also, most importantly, because sometimes we can fall in to the trap of trying to obtain an emotion that's in the framework of the ego, because sometimes it's not what we want, but we are so sidetracked on that path because we're trying to keep ourselves safe, we're trying not to feel pain. So sometimes actually we really need to be honest with ourselves in terms of what we really want. I want this job because it will give me the sense of freedom. Okay, that's what I want. It wasn't actually the feeling of keeping myself safe. That comes from a place of trying not to make the wrong decision because I don't want to feel unworthy. So this is really a path that is on the ego. So from a place of what my soul wants, what I really want, my authentic truth, whatever you want to call it, this job, I want a job that will give me the sense of freedom. Okay, cool. So it's that job. That job I know will give me the sense of freedom. And I'm going to follow the steps that is in alignment to that. So that's really what I wanted to share with you guys, that a lot of the time we are in the experience, we're manifesting through the ego, and it doesn't have to be that hard. We're trying to make decisions with so much attachment, and we're in that game of trying to prove what we've already decided about ourselves. That is not the truth. We're in the ego game. And the biggest shift that we can make in terms of things becoming ease and grace and flow is to get in alignment with our soul, our true self, and make decisions and move and flow based on that. But it is a game. It is not even a game, it is a dance. So sometimes we have to dance and acknowledge the ego stuff to get us back in the place of alignment. And an alignment is when we're most in alignment with our soul, our higher self, whatever we want to call it. But it is a dance. But make sure you are not making decisions and you're not living in your ego. But we also need to acknowledge the ego, and that's about really acknowledging the fears, processing the emotions. It's about getting your ego on board, because your ego really does love you, but it comes from a place of fear. It's trying to avoid the feelings that they felt in the past. So with that, I hope that makes sense to you guys. I want to say one more thing. I really want to give realistic examples, because we all go through this, the ego and the soul, the ego and the heart battle. So I'm going to give you another example. So a lot of us can be stuck in the place of what I'm talking about, where we're kind of in limbo between the ego and the soul. So we're starting to we've got to a place where we're actually connected to our soul. We're connected more to our heart space. So we have inspiration that comes through, and we're starting to ask ourselves what we truly desire. But then what happens? The ego comes in and says to you, well, how's that going to really work? If you do that, then you'll look like this type of person. If you do that, then they'll probably say no. Whatever it is, the ego comes in as an obstacle. It's like, okay, this is this is what you want, but like, based on what's happened before in the past, based on society of how things look, the ego is completely human 3D based, and your soul and your things that come through your heart space, your intuition, your higher self, whatever you want to call it, is, to me, I personally believe, the game in terms of us being able to live life with the realization and the channel of us knowing that we are a soul, and we can have these earthly experiences with our soul's desires. So bringing it back to the example, so that's going on, the tension, the back and forth. And normally we get stuck in this, where we're not fully living a life based on our desires, our true wants, our soul, our higher self, whatever you want to call it, because the fear blocks it, because we're stuck in the how. We're stuck in the perceived obstacles that might take place, or the perceived the way that we're going to be perceived by others if we make a decision that doesn't, a lot of the time, doesn't make sense in the 3D. Like, how is this going to happen? This person's going to think this of me. And what we need to do in that moment is go back to what we want. Go back to what we want. And if what we want is not in alignment to all the fears that are coming up, then we need to bring our focus back to that. Then the next step is truly so I'm just taking a second to breathe. Truly again relying on your soul, on your heart space, on your intuition, on the downloads to come through, in terms of the steps that need to be taken, the steps that need to take place for you to reach your desire, for you to reach your goal. That is the game. That is the game, what I'm talking about, the game that you can choose to play, that is going to give you a lot more, complete fulfillment, because you're not living in the ego and thinking about, okay, now if I do it this way, then what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to do this? I have to work this all out. Oh God, I feel overwhelmed. I can't even do this. Oh gosh, this is not going to work. No, you have to continue to use your spiritual element of who you are to guide you in terms of the steps. And one thing I want to say as well, just to conclude this, bringing us back to the message of oneness. When we do experience things that don't feel good, in terms of a lot of the time the actual fear is external people validating to us our biggest fears, and that's the reason why we don't take action. It could be anything. And the message of oneness is, and I've kind of explained this already, is everyone is a mirror or an aspect of us. Yes, we are all individuals, but if we really start to understand Source, God, all of us coming from that Source God, and slowly we start to divide as we come down onto this earthly experience, and we're all different aspects of Source. So someone can only show you where you are energetically. Someone can only show you where you're choosing to manifest from. So the main point that I want to make from saying this is, stop taking people and their opinions and how they show up so personally. They're just showing you an aspect of you where you are in alignment, not in alignment, your beliefs. That's it. So, with that, realize that life is a game. It isn't that deep. People can show up differently, especially people that mean a lot to you, because that's normally where we have the biggest fear, based on the shift within us. When our energy shifts, and a big part of it is when we let go of more the ego manifestation and trying to manifest and trying to really control creation, and we let go of that, not leaving the ego. We still bring the ego along the journey, but the game is the ego realizing that you're not running shit. My heart space is running it. My spiritual being is running this. And you get to come along this experience and get all your desires and needs that weren't met as a child, but you have to do things my way. So with that feels like a good ending. I'm going to leave it there. This has been kind of like a complex concept, and it might be certain gems for you at particular moments. So take what resonates and leave the rest. So for now, sending you guys so much love and light, and I will see you guys soon. Take care. Bye.